Hey everyone, and a big thanks to Let RPG Reads.
And to our friend Paul Bello.
Fine fellow for sending this article our way.
It's all about running epic D&D campaigns with minimal prep.
Which, let me tell you, is music to my ears.
I don't know about you.
But I've definitely had those nights.
Where I'm up late.
Scribbling down NPC backstories.
And drawing elaborate dungeon maps.
Only for my players.
To completely derail my carefully laid plans.
Oh yeah.
Like that time.
I spent hours crafting a mystery.
Devolving around a stolen magical artifact.
Only for the party to get sidetracked.
By a talking badger.
They found in the woods.
Oh wow.
Who knew badgers had such captivating personalities?
It's a common struggle.
Isn't it?
We want to create these immersive worlds.
With intricate storylines.
But sometimes that desire to over-prepare
can actually stifle the creativity.
and spontaneity of a tabletop RPG.
That's exactly what Emily Thorne argues.
In this article,
How to run an epic D&D tabletop RPG campaign with minimal preparation.
Published just yesterday on Lit RPG Reads.
She makes a compelling case.
That sometimes less is more.
When it comes to DMing,
What's fascinating here
is that Thorne doesn't advocate for no prep at all.
It's not about throwing everything out the window.
And just winging it.
Right.
It's about a shift in mindset.
A move away from being the author of a fixed story.
Towards becoming more of a referee.
Guiding the narrative based on player choices and actions.
Yeah, that author versus referee analogy.
Really resonated with me.
Instead of trying to control every detail.
We're creating a framework.
Setting the stage.
And then letting the players drive the action.
Precisely.
And to illustrate this point,
Thorne includes a table.
Comparing traditional versus minimal prep approaches.
She highlights how over-prepping can lead to rigidity.
And frustration when players inevitably go off script.
On the other hand,
Focusing on core elements.
like strong NPC motivations,
Instead of fully fleshed out backstories.
actually allows for a more dynamic and engaging game.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit.
So instead of spending hours crafting a detailed history,
For every shopkeeper and barmaid,
I should focus on giving them a clear motivation.
that drives their actions in the game.
Exactly.
For example,
Instead of writing a 5-page backstory,
for the blacksmith,
you could simply decide.
that his primary motivation is to protect his family.
This simple motivation can inform how he reacts to the players,
His dialogue.
and even his potential involvement in the larger story.
Okay.
Maybe he refuses to sell weapons to someone he deems dangerous.
Or perhaps he becomes a reluctant ally when his family is threatened by the main villain.
It's such a simple...
But powerful shift in thinking.
It's about focusing on what truly matters for the game.
The elements that will directly impact the player's experience.
And that brings us to the core.
Of Thorne's low-prep philosophy.
Building a solid framework that allows for improvisation.
And flexibility,
She compares to jazz music,
where you have the basic melody and key.
but the real magic happens in the improvisation.
I love that analogy.
So what are the key elements?
Of this framework.
Thorne breaks it down into 3 core components.
The core conflict
The power groups.
and the player hooks.
These elements provide the backbone of your campaign.
Without requiring you to map out every detail in advance.
Okay, let's break those down one by one.
First up, the core conflict.
This is basically the central tension driving the story.
Right.
Exactly.
It could be anything from a war between kingdoms
To a looming ecological disaster.
to a mysterious curse plaguing the land.
It's the overarching problem that your players will be grappling with throughout the campaign.
So, for example,
If I decide the core conflict is a rising necromancer,
threatening to engulf the kingdom in undead hordes.
that sets the stage for all sorts of adventures and challenges.
Precisely.
Now layered on top of that core conflict,
You have the power groups,
these are the key factions and organizations.
that they're vying for power and influence within the world.
Okay.
They could be anything from noble houses and merchant guilds.
To religious orders and criminal syndicates.
Each power group has its own agenda
Its own goals.
and its own methods for achieving them.
So in our necromancer example,
You might have a knightly order,
dedicated to fighting the undead,
a corrupt noble house secretly collaborating with the necromancer,
and a group of scholars.
desperately searching for a way to break the curse,
And all these groups are interacting with each other.
creating a complex web of alliances
Rivalries.
and betrayals
See, that's what dynamics
that
are.
creates opportunities for conflict,
Intrigue. And of course.
heroic intervention by the player characters.
And finally, we have the player hooks
These are the personal stakes.
that tie the player characters into the larger conflict.
Right.
Precisely.
Thorne emphasizes that strong player hooks.
Are crucial for creating a sense of investment and urgency.
It's not enough for the players to know.
that there's a big bad necromancer out there somewhere.
They need a personal reason to care.
A connection to the conflict that makes it feel real and immediate.
So maybe one of the player characters
Is a former apprentice of the necromancer.
now seeking redemption for their past deeds,
Or perhaps another player character's family was killed by the undead.
fueling their desire for revenge
Exactly.
by weaving the player character's personal stories into the larger narrative.
You create a campaign that feels tailored to their interests and motivations.
And this is where Thorne's emphasis on Session 0 really comes into play.
Because that's a great opportunity
To work with your
to
players.
develop those player hooks.
Right.
Absolutely.
A well-run Session 0.
Is more than just going over character sheets and rules.
It's a chance to collaboratively build the world.
And ensure that everyone feels invested in the story from the start.
Thorne suggests asking your players questions about their characters' backgrounds,
Their goals.
their fears.
You're not just collecting information.
You're looking for those nuggets of inspiration.
That can be woven into the campaign's narrative.
That's so smart.
It's like planting those story seeds right from the beginning.
Ensuring that the players are actively involved in shaping the world and the story.
And it probably saves you a lot of prep time in the long run.
Because you're not trying to force preconceived storylines.
Onto characters who might not be interested in them.
Exactly.
By tapping into the player's creativity and enthusiasm.
You're not just saving yourself time and effort.
You're also creating a more engaging and dynamic game.
For everyone involved.
This is all starting to make so much sense.
But before we dive deeper into Thorne's techniques
For creating a dynamic world.
and running engaging encounters with minimal prep,
Let's take a moment to explore some of her essential tools.
for the low prep DM,
She emphasizes
that are simple,
accessible things.
I can make a huge difference in streamlining your game preparation.
One of her top recommendations is a random name generator.
Oh yeah,
Those are lifesavers.
I can't tell you how many times.
I've been caught off guard by the players.
Asking for the name of a random shopkeeper,
Or tavern owner
having a list of pre-generated names on hand,
can really smooth things over.
and keep the game flowing.
And it's not just about names.
Thorne also suggests creating a one-page cheat sheet,
With your core plot points,
key NPC motivations
any important details about the world.
that you want to remember,
So kind of like a DM's crib sheet.
with all the essential information condensed into a single...
Easy to reference document.
Exactly.
It's a way to keep those key elements at the forefront of your mind.
Without having to wade through pages of notes.
That's so practical.
I love how Thorne focuses on these simple...
Actionable tips.
that can make a real difference in our DMing style.
And her final recommendation in this section.
Is something she calls quick reference notes on NPC motivations.
And this is about jotting down
Those core desires and goals.
for each of your major NPCs.
So you can easily access them during the game.
So instead of trying to memorize a detailed backstory,
For every character.
I just have a note that says,
The innkeeper wants to protect his daughter from a dangerous suitor.
or the blacksmith seeks revenge against the bandits who raided his village.
Precisely.
These quick notes serve as reminders,
Of what drives your NPCs.
allowing you to improvise their actions and dialogue.
In a way that feels consistent with their personalities and goals.
I love how these simple tools,
Can really empower us to run a more engaging and dynamic game.
without getting bogged down in unnecessary preparation,
It's all about working smarter.
not harder,
But before we move on,
to Thorne's fascinating ideas about story seeds.
and creating a truly dynamic campaign world,
Hold on,
there's one more essential tool,
that Thorne highlights.
and I think it's particularly relevant.
To our conversation about player hooks in Session 0,
Oh,
he recommends.
having a player backstory integration document.
This isn't about copying down their entire backstories,
But rather about noting key elements.
that you can weave into the campaign.
Okay.
Maybe it's a family heirloom with a hidden power,
A childhood friend who's now a powerful figure.
or a long-forgotten prophecy.
That relates to their character's destiny.
So it's like a treasure trove of potential plot hooks and story seeds.
That are directly tied to the player characters
Exactly.
by having this document readily available,
You can easily sprinkle those personal elements into the game,
making the world feel more interconnected.
and the player's choices feel more meaningful.
This is brilliant,
It's like we're building a collaborative tapestry.
where the player's individual stories
They're woven into the larger fabric of the campaign.
and that collaborative spirit.
Is at the heart of Thorne's approach to low-prep DMing,
It's about trusting in the power of improvisation
embracing the unexpected.
and creating a space where everyone at the table
feels empowered to contribute to the unfolding narrative.
I'm so excited to dive deeper into these concepts.
But first, we need to take a quick break
We'll be back soon to explore Thorne's insights on using story seeds.
to create a dynamic and engaging campaign world.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back.
We were just talking about the essential tools.
Emily Thorne suggests for low-prep DMing.
Right.
These are great for getting organized.
But what really brings a campaign to life?
Are those unexpected moments?
Those sudden twists and turns that keep players on the edge of their seats.
That's where her concept of story seeds comes in.
This is one of my favorite parts of the article.
I love how Thorne compares creating a campaign.
To tending a garden.
You plant these little seeds of intrigue,
And then you watch as they sprout and grow in unexpected ways.
influenced by the player's choices and the natural flow of the game.
It's a beautiful analogy.
Isn't it?
It shifts the DM's mindset
From that of a rigid architect,
to a more nurturing gardener,
fostering an environment where creativity and spontaneity can flourish.
and to help us cultivate those story seeds.
Thorne provides a fantastic table.
Breaking down the key elements,
The mystery hook
the hidden layer.
and the connection point.
Let's dig into these elements.
First up, the mystery hook
This is basically the initial spark.
that grabs the player's attention.
You're right.
What's that?
It's the unexplained event.
Yeah. The strange rumor
The whispered secret.
that piques their curiosity and sets them on a path of investigation,
Think of it as the bait on the hook.
luring them into the depths of the story.
So, for example,
You might have a merchant vanish without a trace.
leaving behind only a cryptic note and a trail of strange clues.
Or perhaps a series of bizarre murders rocks the city.
Each victim marked with a mysterious symbol.
Those are great examples.
Now, once you've hooked their attention,
With that initial mystery,
you need to add depth and intrigue with the hidden layer,
this is the secret truth.
the unexpected twist.
The deeper meaning behind the initial events.
So maybe the missing merchant wasn't just robbed,
He stumbled upon a dangerous conspiracy.
or uncovered a long-lost artifact with incredible power,
Or perhaps those seemingly random murders,
or actually part of a ritual sacrifice.
intended to summon a powerful demon.
Exactly.
The hidden layer adds complexity and intrigue to the story,
Keeping the players guessing and rewarding their investigations.
with those satisfying aha moments.
And finally, we have the connection point.
This is where things get really interesting.
Right.
This is how we link that initial story seed,
To other elements of the campaign?
creating a web of interconnected storylines.
Precisely.
The connection point could be a link to one of the power groups vying for control,
A tie-in to the characters' backstories.
or even a connection to a previous adventure,
It's the thread that weaves the individual story seed.
into the larger tapestry of the campaign.
Okay, let's use Thorne's example from the article
The mysterious disappearance of a merchant.
and see how these elements work together.
Perfect.
So the mystery hook is the merchant's sudden vanishing.
Leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions.
The hidden layer could be that he was secretly smuggling illegal goods,
For a powerful criminal organization.
and his disappearance was an attempt to silence him.
And the connection point could be that one of the player characters owes a debt,
To that criminal organization.
putting them in a dangerous position.
That's brilliant.
Suddenly, what seemed like a simple missing person case.
Becomes a thrilling adventure with far-reaching consequences.
And it all started with a single, well-crafted story seed.
But it's not just about planting these seeds and hoping they grow.
Right.
We need to create an environment where they can thrive.
That's where Thorne's concept of the dynamic world comes in.
Exactly.
Thorne emphasizes that even when the players aren't directly involved,
The world should feel like it's constantly in motion.
evolving, reacting to events, and creating new opportunities for adventure,
So it's not just a static backdrop.
waiting for the players to interact with it.
It has its own internal logic and momentum.
Its own rhythm and pulse,
Precisely.
and to help us create this sense of dynamism.
Thorne provides some fantastic tools and techniques.
One of my favorites is the factions in motion table,
It's such a simple but effective way,
to make those power groups feel like active participants in the world.
not just static entities listed on a page.
Let's break down how this table works.
So for each faction,
You list their current goal and their next move.
what makes this so effective?
It forces you to think about those factions as having agency,
As constantly striving to achieve their objectives.
instead of just being background elements,
They become dynamic forces that shape the world around them.
creating conflicts, opportunities, and challenges for the players.
Okay, let's use an example from our Necromancer campaign.
We have the Knightly Order, dedicated to fighting the undead,
Their current goal might be to gather information.
about the Necromancer's whereabouts.
What might their next move be?
They could be sending scouts into the surrounding countryside,
Interrogating suspected collaborators.
or even launching a raid on a suspected hideout.
Each of these actions has the potential to create encounters,
Reveal new information, and advance the storyline.
whether the players are directly involved or not.
And then we have the corrupt noble house, secretly allied with the necromancer,
Their current goal might be to discredit the knightly order.
and seize control of the city. And their next move could involve spreading rumors about the knights,
Framing them for crimes.
or even assassinating key figures within the order,
These actions create tension, sow discord.
and potentially draw the player characters into the conflict,
And what about the group of scholars?
desperately searching for a way to break the curse.
What might their current goal and next move be?
Their goal might be to locate an ancient text.
Containing the ritual to banish the necromancer.
Their next move could involve deciphering cryptic clues,
Exploring forgotten ruins.
or even seeking out a reclusive hermit.
Rumored to possess forbidden knowledge.
This is so great,
It's like we're creating a living, breathing world,
where things are constantly happening.
even when the players aren't around,
And it opens up so many possibilities.
for unexpected encounters and emergent storylines.
Exactly.
And it's not just about those big factions and organizations
Thorne emphasizes the importance of thinking about the smaller everyday details.
that make a world feel truly alive,
She calls this the living city.
and provides a series of bullet points to guide our thinking.
These bullet points are fascinating.
She talks about things like the flow of goods and information,
The rhythms of daily life.
the underlying tensions and conflicts that simmer beneath the surface,
It's about understanding the city as a complex ecosystem.
where everything is interconnected and constantly in flux.
So instead of just thinking about the physical layout of the city,
We need to consider things like the guilds and merchants,
who control the flow of trade,
the rumors and gossip that spread through the taverns and marketplaces.
the festivals and celebrations that mark the passage of time.
Precisely.
Thorne encourages us to ask questions like,
What are the major industries in this city?
what are the sources of wealth and power?
What are the people's fears and aspirations
What are the underlying tensions and conflicts?
that threaten to erupt into violence?
These questions are so thought-provoking
They really push us to think beyond the surface level,
and create a city that feels vibrant and alive.
full of possibilities for adventure,
And it doesn't require us to map out every street corner.
or write a detailed history of every building.
It's about capturing the essence of the city.
The underlying patterns and rhythms that give it its unique character.
Thorne even suggests adding a layer of randomness.
To our world building,
She encourages us to roll on random encounter tables
to introduce unexpected events and challenges.
that disrupt the player's plans and force them to think on their feet.
It's a fantastic way to inject a sense of unpredictability and excitement into the game,
And it ties back to that idea of the DM as a referee.
responding to the player's actions and the ever-changing dynamics of the world.
This is all so inspiring.
It's really making me rethink my whole approach to DMing.
But before we get too carried away with world building and story seeds,
Let's shift gears and talk about something.
that often feels like the antithesis of low prep DMing.
Combat.
Ah, yes, combat.
That heart-pounding, dice-rolling tactical showdown.
That can sometimes feel like a logistical nightmare for a DM.
But Thorne assures us that even combat can be streamlined.
And made more dynamic with a low prep approach.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
I've definitely had those sessions where I've spent hours statting out monsters,
And meticulously mapping out encounter areas
only for the battle to devolve into a chaotic mess.
of missed rolls and forgotten abilities.
How does Thorne suggest we avoid that pitfall?
One of her key recommendations
Is to embrace simplicity,
she suggests using pre-generated monster stat blocks whenever possible,
focusing on a handful of memorable abilities.
rather than overwhelming players with a laundry list of attacks and special powers.
So instead of spending hours crafting unique monsters with custom stats,
I can just grab a pre-made goblin or ogre from the monster manual.
and tweak it slightly to fit my campaign.
Exactly.
And when it comes to those monster abilities,
Thorne emphasizes the importance of choosing those.
that create interesting tactical challenges or memorable moments
Maybe it's a monster with a powerful area of effect attack.
that forces the players to spread out.
Or perhaps it's a creature with a unique ability,
That allows it to teleport around the battlefield.
keeping the players guessing.
Those are great examples.
It's about focusing on the elements,
That enhance the narrative and the tactical experience.
rather than getting bogged down in unnecessary complexity.
Precisely.
Thorne also suggests using simple terrain features.
To add depth to your combat encounters.
Maybe there's a chasm that the players need to cross.
or a dense forest that provides cover for ranged attackers.
So instead of drawing elaborate maps with every nook and cranny labeled,
I could just sketch out a rough outline of the area.
and let the players' imaginations fill in the blanks.
Exactly.
And you can always improvise additional details as needed.
Based on the player's actions and the flow of the battle.
Remember, it's all about creating a framework for excitement and engagement.
Not a rigid set of rules.
This is so refreshing.
I'm starting to see how a low-prep approach to combat,
Can actually make it more dynamic and fun.
both for the players and the DM.
But before we delve deeper into Thorne's combat tips and tricks,
Well,
there's one more element of low-prep DMing.
that, I think, is crucial for creating a truly engaging and immersive campaign.
And it ties back to everything we've discussed so far.
Improvisation.
Oh, absolutely.
Improvisation is the heart and soul of tabletop RPGs.
It's what allows us to respond to the player's unexpected choices.
To embrace those moments of spontaneity and surprise.
And to create stories that are truly unique and memorable.
But it can also feel daunting,
Especially for new DMs.
who might not be comfortable thinking on their feet.
I understand that feeling.
But Thorne assures us that improvisation is a skill,
That can be learned and practiced.
and she provides some fantastic guidance in the article.
Okay, let's dive into those tips.
What are some of Thorne's key recommendations for mastering the art of improvisation?
First and foremost,
She emphasizes the importance of letting go of the need.
to control every detail.
She encourages us to embrace the unexpected,
And to trust in our ability to create compelling stories in the moment.
even if it means deviating from our original plans,
So if the players decide to go left when I expected them to go right,
or if they come up with a brilliant plan.
that completely throws me off script.
I need to be able to roll with it and adapt.
Exactly.
Thorne reminds us that the player's choices are gifts.
Not burdens.
They provide opportunities to explore new avenues
To discover unexpected twists and turns.
and to create stories that are truly collaborative and emergent.
That's a great mindset shift.
Instead of seeing those unexpected moments as failures
We can view them as opportunities to flex our creative muscles.
and make the game even more exciting,
Precisely.
and to help us embrace those moments of improvisation.
Thorne suggests adopting the yes and principle.
From improvisational theater,
Okay, I've heard of this principle.
but how does it apply to DMing?
It's simple but powerful.
Whenever a player proposes an action,
Or suggests an idea.
you respond with yes and,
You accept their premise and then build upon it.
adding your own creative flair and shaping the narrative in a way.
That feels both logical and engaging.
So, for example,
If a player decides to befriend a goblin,
instead of fighting it,
I wouldn't shut them down.
I'd say yes, and that goblin happens to know a secret passage through the mountains.
That could lead you to your destination.
Or perhaps yes, and that goblin is actually the exiled prince of the Goblin Kingdom.
Seeking to reclaim his throne.
Exactly.
By saying yes and, you open up a world of possibilities.
Allowing the player's creativity to fuel the narrative.
And creating a truly collaborative storytelling experience.
I love how this principle empowers both the players and the DM.
To contribute to the unfolding story.
But what about those times?
When we're truly stumped.
What if the players throw us a curveball?
That we just can't seem to handle on the fly.
Thorne acknowledges.
That those moments will happen.
And she provides some practical advice for dealing with them.
She suggests having a few DM safety nets in place.
A list of evocative location names.
Some random encounters ready to modify.
A handful of NPC personalities you can drop in.
Plot complications that can work anywhere.
And a few mysteries without predetermined solutions.
These safety nets are brilliant.
It's like having a toolkit of narrative gadgets and gizmos
That we can pull out.
whenever we need to buy ourselves some time.
Or steer the story in a new direction.
Exactly.
And Thorne emphasizes that it's okay to pause the game for a moment.
If you need to collect your thoughts or consult your notes.
She reminds us that there's no shame in taking a brief break.
To ensure that we're providing the best possible experience for our players.
This is all so reassuring.
It's making me feel so much more confident about embracing improvisation.
And trusting in my ability to handle those unexpected moments.
That make tabletop RPGs so special.
And remember,
Thorne's entire approach to low-prep DMing.
Is built on the foundation of flexibility.
Adaptability and trust.
It's about letting go of the need to control every detail.
And embracing the collaborative nature of this amazing hobby.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into the world of low-prep DMing.
We've covered so much ground.
From crafting compelling story seeds.
To creating a dynamic world.
To mastering the art of improvisation.
But there's still one crucial aspect we need to explore.
How do we sustain a low-prep campaign over the long term?
How do we keep things fresh and exciting?
Not just for our players.
But for ourselves as DMs as well.
We'll tackle that question and more
When we return after a quick break.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive
We've been exploring Emily Thorne's fantastic article,
on low-prep DMing.
and it's really got me fired up.
To run my next campaign,
We've talked about building a dynamic world,
crafting compelling story seeds.
and even streamlining combat.
But now I'm curious about the long game.
How do we keep a low-prep campaign going strong,
Not just for a few sessions,
but for weeks,
months.
maybe even years?
That's the key, isn't it?
Sustainability.
Thorne addresses this directly.
Arguing that a low-prep approach done right,
Is actually ideal for long-term campaigns.
it's built-in adaptability.
Keeps things fresh and exciting for everyone at the table.
So it's not just about saving time on prep.
It's about creating a campaign structure.
That can evolve and grow organically over time.
Precisely.
Thorne uses a brilliant analogy,
She compares a campaign to a living organism.
like a tree,
It needs space to grow,
to branch out.
to adapt to its environment.
The final form rarely matches the initial seed.
And that's a good thing.
I love that.
So instead of clinging to my original plan,
I should be open to letting the campaign evolve
based on what happens at the table
on the player's choices.
and those unexpected moments of inspiration,
Exactly.
and to help with that.
She suggests keeping a campaign evolution journal.
Now, this isn't about taking copious notes during every session
It's more about jotting down major developments.
and noting those moments
So the players are particularly engaged.
or intrigued
So if my players suddenly become obsessed,
with a seemingly minor NPC,
or if a random encounter sparks a whole new storyline.
I make a note of it.
Precisely.
It's about identifying those emergent patterns
And potential story threads.
without getting bogged down in documentation.
The goal is to stay attuned to what's working,
What's capturing your players' imaginations?
and then use those insights to shape the campaign's direction.
That makes perfect sense.
It's like we're constantly taking the pulse of the campaign.
Making sure it's healthy and vibrant.
But what about those times when the energy starts to flag,
How do we prevent campaign fatigue?
both for ourselves and our players?
Thorne talks about the importance of sustaining interest.
And her key point is that both the challenges and the stakes,
Need to evolve over time.
what thrilled your players at level 1.
Might bore them to tears at level 10.
So it's not just about throwing bigger and badder monsters at them.
It's about finding new and interesting ways.
To challenge them both narratively and mechanically,
Exactly.
Thorne provides a really helpful table,
Outlining different challenge types
and how the stakes should evolve.
based on level range.
For example, at lower levels,
The challenges might be local threats.
bandits harassing a village.
Maybe a haunted house.
The stakes are personal,
Survival.
protecting loved ones.
Maybe gaining a small reward.
Right. Classic early game stuff.
But as the characters level up,
They're not going to be sweating those small-time threats anymore.
precisely.
So you escalate the challenges to regional issues.
Perhaps a corrupt noble is exploiting the local populace.
Or a cult is spreading its influence.
threatening the stability of a whole province.
Now the stakes are about protecting communities.
Maybe uncovering conspiracies.
And the rewards are greater.
More impactful.
Okay, I'm seeing the pattern here.
So when the party reaches those higher levels,
We're talking kingdom-level threats, right?
wars, ancient prophecies.
Maybe even world-ending scenarios.
Exactly.
The stakes become about shaping the fate of nations.
Maybe even saving the world?
The rewards might be legendary artifacts,
Positions of power.
or a lasting legacy that reshapes the world.
This is a great framework for keeping those challenges meaningful.
It ensures the players always have something to strive for.
And it gives us, as DMs,
A roadmap for escalating the narrative and the stakes.
as the campaign progresses,
But let's be honest,
even with the best planning,
sometimes things go off the rails.
how do we know when it's time for a course correction
Now, how do we do it?
without derailing the whole campaign?
This is where Thorne's advice is pure gold.
She says the key is to pay attention to your players,
Not just what they say.
but how they engage with the game.
She even lists some warning signs.
That your campaign might need an adjustment.
Okay.
Players spending more time on their phones than in character.
Reduced out-of-game discussion about the campaign.
Frequent session cancellations.
Declining player initiative.
Shorter sessions.
All those subtle cues that the energy is waning.
Those are really helpful indicators.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own grand plans
And forget to check in with our players.
and see how they're feeling.
So if we start noticing those warning signs,
What do we do?
how do we get things back on track?
Thorne's advice is simple but profound.
Go back to what worked before.
Think about those moments in the campaign.
When everyone was truly engaged.
Excited on the edge of their seats.
What elements sparked that enthusiasm?
Was it a particular type of challenge?
A specific NPC?
A certain storyline,
Often the best course correction is to return to those elements.
but with a fresh perspective.
New stakes.
Or unexpected consequences.
That's brilliant.
It's about rediscovering the heart of the campaign.
That spark of joy and excitement.
That brought everyone together in the first place.
And it ties back to the idea of being flexible, adaptable.
And responsive to the ever-changing dynamics of the game.
Oh, exactly.
And ultimately, that's the essence of Thorne's message.
A successful low-prep campaign isn't about rigidly adhering to a plan.
It's about creating a space for shared storytelling.
For collaboration.
For genuine connection between DM and players.
It's about building a world that feels alive.
Responsive and full of possibilities.
Where everyone at the table feels empowered.
To contribute to the unfolding narrative.
This has been such an incredible deep dive.
Emily Thorne's article is packed with so much wisdom.
And practical advice.
And it's really inspired me to rethink my whole approach to DMing.
I'm feeling so much more excited and confident.
About running a low-prep campaign now.
And I can't wait to share what I've learned with my players.
Huge thanks to Paul Bello.
Fine fellow.
For recommending this article.
And to Lit RPG Reads for publishing such insightful content.
And to you, dear listener.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery.
Until next time.
Happy gaming.